Good morning, Jonathan.
Morning.
I've been thinking about something you said the other day. You can prepare everything perfectly and still not control the outcome. That applies to sport, but also to courtrooms and probably to life.
Absolutely does. It's a lesson that sports teach you when you're very young and throughout your career, throughout school, and in my life, even today, that is very true. You can work as hard as you can. You can be the absolutely most prepared person in the room, whether that's a courtroom or a basketball court, and the outcome ultimately can be decided by another person or by fate.
Absolutely. So today I want to explore that tension, particularly preparation versus uncertainty, and what separates people who handle it well from those who don't. This is going to be interesting, Jonathan.
I'm looking forward to it, and I'm really excited to have this conversation. Thank you for having me on your platform.
All right, let's get into it. The following is a conversation with Jonathan Osborne, former Division 1 athlete and federal prosecutor turned high stakes defense attorney. This is Pre-Zero Sports Talk podcast, and I'm your host, Sid Bensalah. Today, we delve into the intersection of sports, law, and leadership to uncover genuine stories and insights that truly matter. Thank you for tuning in, subscribing, and supporting the show. Your support and financial contribution help us bring authentic voices, real stories, and conversations that go beyond the game. If you'd like to support the show, please check the episode description for more. Jonathan, once again, welcome to the show.
Sid, thanks for having me. I'm thrilled to be on the show with you.
You've had a unique journey, Division 1 basketball, federal prosecutor, now advising people in some of the most high pressure situation in business and sport. Let me start simple. Take us back, Jonathan. What did sport give you early on that you still carry today?
So many things. One thing that comes to mind is that sports teaches you to lose with grace, but also to win with grace. And that professionalism that you learn even when you're a child, if you think back in any sport really that I ever played, having played basketball, football, volleyball, at the end of the game, win or lose, you get in the handshake line and you shake hands with the other team and with the other coaches. And that is taught to you as good sportsmanship. But that lesson carries itself forward in life, especially when you are in a what is sometimes zero sum win loss business like I am. It's about being the most prepared, being the most talented if you can be, but recognizing that if the ultimate score at the end of the game doesn't favor you or your client, you still have an obligation to carry yourself with dignity and with class because the system requires that, but also your client deserves that.
Yeah. What did basketball teach you and still shows up in your work today?
So my basketball career was an interesting one. As a kid, probably through my junior year of high school, I didn't really fantasize about being a professional athlete. What I thought about was becoming an attorney one day. When I was a junior in high school, we moved to Las Vegas and I went to a large school where a lot of my teammates were getting recruited by big colleges. And so I had the benefit of college coaches coming to see my teammates and a few of those coaches taking interest in my game. So when I ultimately chose to go to UNLV and started my basketball career there, I was very excited to do so. And it ended up being a great experience for me. But I wasn't one of those kids who grew up dreaming that basketball was going to be my way to be successful in life. I attribute a lot of that to my upbringing and from my parents. But to answer your question, basketball taught me that sometimes I would be the most talented and the best player on the team or on the court, but that sometimes I would not be. And
Right.
navigating that taught me a lot. But one thing it taught me was grit. One thing it taught me
Mm.
was patience. But maybe the biggest lesson that it teaches you is humility because there's always someone taller, faster, who can shoot better, maybe even with better luck. better genes, more money, but all you can control is your preparation and your performance to the extent that you can predict the outcome of your performance. And like we talked about a few minutes ago, you can be the most prepared and the most talented and still lose. The March Madness teaches you that every year, and it's going on now. I watched a game last night where it literally went down to the last second buzzer, zero point
To the
0.7
wires.
seconds left to the wire. And that's true on the field. That's true in the courtroom. You can have an 8-week trial decided in 1 hour by a jury that you can't control.
I love the way you look at the whole thing. And just to summarize so far, we just started, man. So you said three
Thanks.
important things in life:
Yeah.
grace, grit,
Melody.
humility. Here we go. Grace, grit, humility. And it's so hard to even teach humility, to be humble. And we need that. We really need it. Jonathan, was there a moment where you had to redefine yourself?
Yes. Yes. And that lesson and that opportunity actually came by being unsuccessful at my first school. So I started at UNLV, which is my Division I college experience. I was there for 2 years and hardly played. Couldn't get off the bench, no matter how hard I tried, how hard I practiced, how early I got up and worked extra hours. And I loved my teammates, and I still do. And I actually am very grateful for that experience, because it taught me that however you feel about what you deserve, your circumstances may not align with your expectation for any particular experience. And so, Sid, this example to say, after 2 years, my coach left, a new coach came in. He actually personifies grit, grace, and humility. He's a fantastic coach. But after 2 years of really struggling with my identity and really trying to understand how you could work so hard but not see any reward from it, I decided at that time, at just 20 years old, to retire, so I thought, from basketball.
Yeah.
And so I had to redefine myself overnight, because I didn't leave the school. I stayed at UNLV, but I wasn't on the basketball team anymore. So, and everybody was very nice about it. But my teammates became former teammates, even though we're still in class together. And to the university community, I was on the team one day and not on it the next. And there was no story about any scandal or me being kicked off. I quit, if you will. I retired before I had to. And that experience actually has defined my decision making ever since. Yeah. So I left the team at 20. The coaches were very nice. They said, if you want to come back, you're welcome to. Mm-hmm. That school year, I became just a student, and I coached a high school basketball team. And coaching a high school basketball team reminded me why I love basketball to begin with. And it wasn't actually to be under the fireworks or to be praised or for the adulation. It was for the team.
Yeah.
And I chose to play again. And that's what took me to the University of Alaska, which is a Division II school. But I picked the University of Alaska, really focused on what can I contribute to the team, because everybody knew there weren't going to be any fireworks or any sold out arenas. And I didn't actually care about that. But it took that trial and that difficulty, that failure, if you will, right, to refocus on what my priorities were. And I've taken that approach and the lessons from failure in that experience everywhere I've gone since then. It helped me pick my law school. It helped me pick this law firm where I work. It also helped me decide when to become a federal prosecutor and when to no longer be a federal prosecutor, because you have to always focus on what is most important to you and how the platform that you're on helps you contribute to the team the best.
Yeah. Yeah. The switch from a player to coaching to a coach, was it an easy one? Was it a difficult one? Was it? Because here we go from being on a court, playing a game, to leading a game as a coach.
I think it can be, I think it can be difficult. It depends in a person's trajectory, how they end up transitioning from player to coach. So I was a basketball player, but I was an unhappy one because I wasn't playing when it mattered, which was during the games. I was playing great in practice.
Were you frustrated at the coach? Sitting on the
Sid, it's been a long time. I
yeah,
don't remember actually being angry or frustrated with my coaches because my teammates were all very talented too. I was
right.
sad. I was more
Yeah,
so sad that I wasn't able to contribute more and that my hard work, or at least what I perceived to be my hard work, wasn't being rewarded. It was like, it felt like, you're asked, and this, I'm sure this is true of athletes today. You're asked to wake up every morning and go through everything else that the rest of your team is going through. And game after game after game, you don't get a chance to show everyone what you've been working on.
yeah.
Right?
It's hard. It's hard.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
And
it's
and
hard.
so my transition to coaching was not difficult because I had in my mind at that time decided I wasn't going to play anymore. And I was happy to become a coach and to pass on what I had learned and to help kids get better. But those kids reminded me, one, that I was still a kid myself, but two, why I love sports to begin with. And that's what inspired me to get back in the game. Really, just
Mhm.
1 year later, I was out for one school year and then got back in the game. And I'm so grateful that I did.
Fantastic. Why do athletes tend to perform well in business and maybe in law as well, like yourself?
Fundamentally, probably athletes in sports, even if you play an individual sport, teaches you about the importance of team. And in any business, in the legal business, you cannot succeed without your team. I think the second thing that sports teaches you that's applicable in business and in law as well is that excellence really is negotiable. To compete at the highest levels of sports, even if you're not the best, you have to always want to be the best, to wake up and keep doing it. And the same is
Right.
true when you start a business and in law, which in the practice that I'm in now is a business. But whether you're in business law or in public service, every morning you have to wake up and say, I'm going to be the best I can be today, even if yesterday didn't go my way. And that is literally what athletes deal with every morning. Every
Every
season
morning.
ends,
Yeah.
there's only one champion. Everybody else failed.
Yeah.
What gets you on the field, on the court, on the pitch, in the pool for another turn at this?
Mm. I found it the hardest part while I was coaching and even when I was competing because we have this transition period where it's kind of break holidays, but it's never holiday because your mind is I mean you put behind you whatever happened the the past season and you get yourself mentally prepared for the next one. And each athlete, each individual has its own, he or she has its own way, own method. But I mean, there is no rest. Your mind does not rest. You just, how I say, asking yourself, what can I do better? What lesson have I learned? How can I optimize? And we're going to talk about that, by the way, when it comes to everyday's life.
Yes.
And what habits stayed with you the longest?
Uh, the mind and body preparation for competing at a high level. So how that's manifested in my life is when you're a young athlete, and this could be from when you're a child through
Mhm.
your teenage years and your early 20s, assuming you don't get injured badly, your body reacts pretty well and you can train and you can perform at a high level without thinking about it a lot. The older you get, the more ice, the more rest, the more physical therapy, the more stretching is required to continue to physically compete at a high level.
Mm.
And at all times, when you start playing high stakes sports, or if you're doing high stakes business, if you're in a high stakes practice of law, your mental health and acuity is just as important as your physical health and your ability to physically perform. And so I think the habits have evolved as my life and lifestyle has evolved over time, but the commitment to asking the question, what am I doing to achieve the best possible physical health? And how does my life, my chosen profession, my chosen job impact my happiness and wellness and the fulfillment that I take from my work? Are questions that are top of mind all the time. I actually had a mentor tell me many, many years ago when I was about 21. I graduated from undergraduate, but I hadn't started law school yet, that I should think about my life in 7-year increments, and that every 7 years I should be thinking about I would already be in one or approaching a period of explosive growth or explosive evolution in my life. How that's manifested for me is in 3 categories: professional life, family life or personal life, and community service. And
Right.
he was not a sports mentor, but the lesson that he taught me applies equally to sports as it does to life, which is you have to look at the future and ask yourself, what am I doing to prepare for the next chapter of my career? Whether that's on the court or in business or as a thought leader on a platform like yours. What can I do today to be the best I can be today, but also recognizing that tomorrow is going to bring new challenges that I have to be prepared for.
Right. You prepare, but we don't control the outcome. How do you deal with that mentally, Jonathan?
So at this point in life, it seems like it probably comes naturally to me, but
You don't
it's
think about
because
it.
because I've been doing it so long.
Yeah, yeah.
Practice doesn't make it easy. It just makes it easier to remain calm in the midst of chaos. The
Mm,
chaos is still chaotic, and it still keeps me up at night, and it still sometimes wakes me up far earlier than I want to be awake in
mm.
the morning. But the ability to embrace it and to drive toward that uncertainty is a lesson that those of us who are fortunate to coach or play sports learn very early. I have nephews who play football. I have nieces who play volleyball, and I
Mhm.
watch the videos of them performing, and they're not thinking about their career when they're playing volleyball, their future career. But every time that ball goes over the net, that's chaos because you have no idea what's going to happen next or where it's going to bounce or how the referee
Especially,
is going to rule.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Especially volleyball, it has exploded. The women's volleyball, but it's not only in the U.S. Everywhere,
Yes.
because the court. I mean, the grandstand is so close
Mm-hmm.
to the action, maybe closer than basketball court, or the same. I think is the same. But then the energy is wow. And as you said, when the ball is in the air, you know, you have no clue what
No
outcome.
clue.
No, absolutely no clue. It's and that's the beauty. That's
Agree.
absolutely the beauty. Funny enough, half an hour before we started recording, Jonathan, I was watching CBS, and it was this feature with Michael Jordan, and we all love Michael Jordan and what
Yes.
he did to the sport, all generation, youngsters, beyond. But then he got himself involved in NASCAR, and he's been winning,
Yes. Yes.
non-stop.
Yes.
And that feature was about M- Michael, the person, and the winning mentality. Michael is basketball, Chicago Bulls or whatever, but then kind of transferring that achievement into a completely different sport and motorsports, which is hard. It's unbelievable, And the way he was talking with Gail on CBS was only a short clip because they didn't show the entire documentary. Again, with grace and humility, and as you said earlier, Jonathan, which is amazing, absolutely amazing. Yeah, yeah.
Like I said, one thing Michael Jordan, I remember this even from being a kid. One thing that his commercials used to talk about was how many game-winning shots he's missed, how many times he's failed. And one of the lessons that is still taught about Michael Jordan is that he didn't make the varsity basketball team, I believe, his sophomore year.
Yeah.
And we actually have a kid's book at home that I've read to each of my children. The oldest is 5. The youngest loves this book. He just calls it the Baba book. And I actually read it to him last night. And the last page of the book, it talks about Michael Jordan's career, basically through the 2 times the Chicago Bulls had 3-peat championships. But the last page of the book talks about how Michael Jordan succeeds because of all the times that he failed and didn't give up. And that lesson is taught to us every day, whether we're thinking about it or not. But Michael Jordan has had, I'm sure, business ventures that did not go as well as NASCAR's going, and
Yes. Yeah.
has been a famous person, since my whole life. Actually, he was drafted in 1984,
Yeah.
so I'm sure he's had private and public ups and downs.
Mm.
But the reason why he continues to succeed is because he doesn't give up.
He doesn't. Have you watched the Last Dance on Netflix?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I think I've
How can
seen
I
it
miss
3
it?
times. I think I've seen it 3 times. It's just because every time I see The Last Dance, it's there is so many good memories. You know, it's yeah. It's by the way, my favorite player for my audience was Scottie Pippen. Put it this way. I love Michael Jordan, but I always yeah. It's a different era, and when I see, look, this is not a criticism. When I see the NBA today, God, it's different. It's
It is.
completely different. The games are different. The energy is different. The I don't know. I don't know how to explain it. It's completely different. Anyway.
It
Yeah,
is
yeah.
it is different. I think just thinking back on when I was young, watching sports. Well, we couldn't watch TV in our house during the week, but if the
Mm.
Bulls were playing, I had an exception. If my homework was done, I could watch Michael Jordan and the Bulls play. And
Yeah.
I think one thing, as I reflect on how sports have evolved, is it could be in part that the game is different on the court, but Sid, it could also be that the stories and the narratives around sports and around athletes have
Yes.
also evolved.
Yeah.
And there
That's
could be a
true.
million reasons for that. But
Mm.
I remember feeling, like taking personally the Bulls journey, what win or loss. And this is as a very young child. And I used to watch, I had a series of VHS tapes that were like basically contemporaneous Michael Jordan and Chicago Bulls documentaries that came in a
Mm.
box, like 3 or 4 tapes in a box. And I would watch those videos over and over again, thinking about how I was gonna incorporate Michael Jordan's game into my game, but I think more so thinking about my identity in the context of the stories told about the Chicago Bulls,
Mm.
the ups and downs, the loss of life. Michael Jordan's father gets killed. He
Yeah.
comes he
Yeah.
comes
That
back
was.
from it, right? All that was very heartfelt to the public back in those days.
Yeah. Yeah. He did so much for the sport. Same like Tiger Woods, what he did to golf, and Lewis Hamilton, what he did to Formula One as well. So
I agree.
it's shout out to them. Yeah,
I agree. I
absolutely.
agree.
Jonathan, how do you define winning today?
In my profession, we sometimes define winning based on how a judge or a jury decides a case. That happens sometimes, but most of our cases don't go to trial. And so the way that I think about winning professionally most of the time is achieving the best possible outcome for our client under the circumstances and under the facts of their situation, which most of the time leads to some type of negotiated another business or with the government. That's a win, even if it doesn't always feel like a win because neither side is thrilled about the outcome. Outside of my work, I define winning the same way I did when I was an athlete, which is I'm gonna compete at the highest level that I can. Sometimes I win, sometimes I won't.
Mhm.
But if I don't get injured and can play the next day, I'm going to.
Has losing changed you?
Yeah. It's made me. It's made me.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah. It's losing is probably the most important thing that can happen to a young person. It's far more important than winning is.
done winning.
But it is healthier to me when I think about other people's lives, my mentees or young people that I know. It's helpful to win too, but losing is gonna give you the defining characteristics that set you apart from the competition. I think it's also very important for us to learn how to maintain professionalism and class when you lose, because that becomes your not only your character but your reputation too. And once you have a reputation as a sore loser in sports, it may not matter if you still win, right? The coaches and athletic departments may accept a sore loser on their team, but in business and in our business, a reputation for being a cheater or someone who mistreats others because they are upset about losing or are fearful of losing, is not an acceptable reputation and can cost you your career.
Right, right. I see this tendency mainly with the youngsters and kids in general. Maybe it's because of the social media, but I see this tendency when someone has a setback or lose a game, the first thing they do is try to blame someone, instead of trying to reflect and understand why they lost, and have a plan and do better next time.
Right.
Which is very strange, to be honest with you. Either blaming a teacher, blaming a coach, blaming your colleague. It's a mindset, it's a culture, it's yeah. Jonathan, what does servant leadership look like in your world?
So thanks for that question. I've defined in my professional journey servant leadership by a few different characteristics. The first one is one we've talked about today, which is a team mentality. The second one is a commitment to excellence for yourself and your team. The third is humility. The fourth one is indispensable, and it actually is something that requires more attention and more work than some people realize, which is vision. You can naturally have a vision, but as you progress in life, in order to continue being a visionary, you have to actually practice that too. You have to spend time thinking about the future and the possibilities for yourself and for the organization that you serve. And then the last quality of a servant leader is mentorship. The best leaders I've been around are people who are mentors, but also who have accepted mentorship from others who could be senior to them, who could be at their same level, or who could be junior to them, but have a different set of life experience that you can learn from. And I've seen some of the best leaders lead from the back of the room. I've also seen some of the best leaders lead from the stage, and embracing the possibilities as a leader in whatever scenario, as the public leader of an organization or the behind the scenes person getting the job done that gets no recognition, are equally valuable.
How do you lead when you're not the strongest voice?
Lead in silence, by example, with no voice. And you
Lead
can
by
lead.
example. Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. By serving, by finding ways to help. And sometimes, even when your voice is not the loudest voice, going to whoever's voice is the loudest voice in private to give them your feedback, to give them your ideas.
Back, you spoke earlier about switching or being a basketball player, and suddenly you turned as a coach. Those youngsters, was it easy to gain trust as a coach, as a leader of a team, or it took time?
In those days, it wasn't that difficult because I was actually pretty close to them in age, and they knew I was a good basketball player.
Right.
So they were in high school. Let's say they were probably 15, 16 years old, and I was 19 or 20 years old.
In your 20s, yeah.
Yes. So we had a natural rapport, I think, because we were close in age, but also because I could play still. So they were, many of them, looking to get better. From what I remember, we didn't have, a team of people who were expecting to be NBA players themselves. They were kids who loved sports for the same reason that I love sports, which is for the athletic competition, the challenges of trying to get better every day, and at bottom, the family that is created by your team. And they reminded me that that's what basketball was about for me. And that's what led to a lot of decisions that I made after that season.
Right. Let's shift gear and talk about pressure and performance. What kind of pressure did you face as a federal prosecutor?
It's a great, great reflection as I think back, and I appreciate that question. As a federal prosecutor in our district, so I practiced in South Florida, and my office was in Miami, where we have always had a good deal of violent crime, a good deal of organized and very high level drug trafficking and money laundering, and other cases that involve financial fraud as well, and as well as national security. I never handled national security cases, but for the other three categories, I handled a number of those matters. And so the pressure really manifests in probably three ways. The first is the pressure, if you see it that way, of being the person who's tasked with keeping the public safe. So you're entrusted with decisions that will impact first the victims of crime. That's who you're always thinking about. And then they also, though, will impact the lives of people who you authorize to be arrested and who you elect to charge with crimes and who ultimately many of whom go to prison. So the first pressure is to protect the public and to do the right thing along the way. When a case goes to trial, then there's the pressure of performing well at the trial. I remember as a prosecutor being very focused on really following the rules of procedure and the rules of evidence, so as to not cause a case to be derailed because I made a mistake. And so there's some pressure there. And then for any trial lawyer, when the jury is deliberating, there's the pressure of winning and losing because at that point it's out of your hands. Yes. And I think the best prosecutors prosecute and charge what we call righteous cases. And they see them through trial, but ultimately the jury is in our system for a reason. The jury decides who's guilty and who's not guilty. The prosecutor does not. Yeah. So that was pressure in a way, but I think if you're prepared and if you have the perspective, at least that I had, the pressure is somewhat alleviated because, once you put that case on the right way, it's out of your hands. Just like when you shoot the ball, whether it's a three or the gentleman from Purdue last night shot a layup and missed it, but then his teammate tipped it back in. It's the same. You let the ball go and it's out of your hands.
It's out of your hands, yeah. So there is some kind of similarity between a courtroom and the sporting arena or basketball court.
So,
yeah. How do you stay composed, Jonathan, when you feel that pressure on? Yes.
Oh, yeah. At first, when you're learning, you lean back to your days in sports. So the first time you go up to a podium to give an opening statement, the first time you go into court and make an argument before a judge, the first time you make a closing argument before a jury, the first time you're thinking, I can do this because I competed in all these other arenas before, and I either did well or at minimum I survived it. Right. So as you develop experience, though, in this realm and in your profession, once you become an experienced trial lawyer, now you're reaching back to your experience as a trial lawyer just the same. And you're saying to yourself, you're not just saying I've done this 10 times. What you're saying is I've done this 10 times and every time I've gotten better, and I'm better today than ever before, and it's showtime.
There we go. Showtime. Love it.
Showtime.
Is it easy to read the room at the beginning, at the start, or it's a constant, or it evolves?
It evolves. It evolves.
Right.
One thing that has benefited me, I think, in my legal career is that when I was young as high school and maybe even middle school at church, At my school, in the community, I would do public speaking to kids, to other high school kids, and then when I was in college, to young athletes. And what public speaking teaches you is that really your message, if it's best, is a message about the audience more than it is a story about yourself or trying to get your audience to focus on how great you are. And that's what trying jury trials is like too. The case really is about the facts and the parties and what the experiences that they've had that bring them to the courtroom. But the most effective trial lawyer has to know their audience. They have to focus on your audience and convey your message in a way that they will understand it, in a way that, if you're fortunate, they will be persuaded. So to answer your question, reading the room is an evolution that for some people maybe starts when they graduate from law school, but for me started when I was a child.
When you were, yeah. Thanks for sharing.
Of course.
Thanks for sharing. You said that you do your best when we were talking about the pressure, making sure that the public, when it comes to safety, the public are protected and so on and so forth. But the decision, it's for the jury to decide. So it's out of your hand. When the decision is given, how do you handle decisions that affect someone's life or reputation
As a prosecutor?
as a prosecutor?
Yes. So I've had jury trials as a prosecutor where we won. I've had a few where we did not win. And Sid, to be transparent, I handled each the same.
Right.
I shook hands with my opponent, oftentimes with the defendant as well, if that was a possibility.
Mhm.
On the way out of the courtroom, I greeted their families, whether we prevailed or did not prevail, because it's not about me. During the trial, the showtime may seem like it's about the lawyers, but it's really not. And so I don't know if you saw, but Rick Pitino, St. John's beat Kansas on a buzzer beater last week, and
No, I
Rick
didn't see
Pitino.
that. No, I didn't see
So
that. No.
yeah, so watch if you get a chance, watch the clip.
Okay. Yeah, I will.
St. John's
I will.
wins on a buzzer beater, and Rick Pitino's facial expression doesn't change at all. He just walks to the line to shake hands with the other team and walk off the court.
Mhm.
And that's exactly, I mean, a lot of coaches may disagree with that approach, but for a trial lawyer, that is exactly what it should look like.
No, but that's the beauty of sport. Sorry. We've been taught and we've been teaching the little ones and any athlete, any team from grassroots all the way to elite. The minute you lose, you go out there and you look at your opponent in the eyes, you have to mean it and shake hand.
Right.
It's non-negotiable. And if you don't do it, yeah, we are all human, so the adrenaline is rushing like crazy in our veins. But then when you cool down, you go again and shake hand and congratulate. That's how it is. And we are human beings. I mean, we deal with emotions, but the hardest part, and I will ask you this as well, how do you detach emotionally from each case? Or do you lean into it?
So you don't, in my experience, in the courtroom and in the presence of the jury, you
Sorry to why I'm asking this question, because for me and for folks out there and for my listeners, we all seen this Hollywood drama, brutal court cases, and you name it. There is millions of them out there. But there is always the hero, the villain, you
yeah,
know. But it's brutal, Jonathan. It's absolutely brutal. But in reality, is it like that?
it can be like that in reality. And
Yeah.
my response would be that while you're in the courtroom, the lawyer should appear to be detached emotionally, but you're not always detached from the outcome. And you're certainly not detached emotionally from your client if you represent a defendant in a criminal case or even in a civil case. And so you carry their emotional burdens just like you carry your briefcase. And so you don't detach. I think over time, though, what life experience and what legal experience teaches you, that you prepare best and put on the best performance that you can. You have to accept, even if it hurts, that the outcome is out of your hands. And what you tell a client, both in a criminal case and a civil case, is the best way to control this outcome is to reach an agreement and to take it out of the hands, take it out of the hands of the jury or the judge. And during trials, especially in civil trials, the judge will tell the parties the same thing. The judge, before you pick the jury, during the trial, and before the jury deliberates, will say to the parties, you understand that if you don't go across to your former business partner and figure out a way to resolve this, that these jurors over here are going to make a decision for you, right?
Right.
And it's ultimately the client's decision whether to proceed or not. And sometimes it's very difficult and the case can't be settled because the two sides cannot reach an agreement. But really the takeaway, Sid, is that especially as a prosecutor, when you're dealing with cases that involve, victims who have suffered physically or have been traumatized by abuse, you cannot detach emotionally from their pain or from what they've experienced. But as a professional, your job is to follow the rules, put on the evidence, make the most impassioned argument that you can within the law, and then the jury has to do its job, and then the judge has to do her or his job, and you have to accept that. That's the job that we accepted. That's our profession. That's our calling.
Right. Yeah. Let's talk about the name, image, and likeness, NIL. What are athletes' misunderstanding about NIL deals?
The litigation, Sid, that I've seen around the country between athletes and their schools or athletes in the NCAA, I think what athletes and their families misunderstand is the same thing that a lot of business people misunderstand about NIL agreements, which is that they're contracts and that the party with the most bargaining power strategically puts things in contracts if they can that are going to benefit them. And so if the university has the most bargaining power because the university is the entity along with the collectives and the donors who are providing the funds, you can expect that the contract that they're offering you or me is drafted in a way that if there's a dispute between us, there are some things in there that are going to favor the school. You can't always negotiate those things out of a contract because maybe a student doesn't have any alternatives, or maybe all the universities are offering essentially the same type of deal. But when a dispute arises, both in sports and in business, an example of a part of a contract that is very important is where will the dispute be resolved? Will the case go to arbitration? Will it be resolved in court? Will it be resolved in court in the state where the university is located? In the community where the athlete is from? And who pays the attorney's fees at the end? These are all...
It's complicated.
It is. And it's so complicated, Sid, that a lot of very, very sophisticated business people go into contracts every day without really focusing on those terms. And a month or 6 months or 10 years later, when the circumstances change or the relationship sours, they come to see me because they realize that the contract that they signed a month ago or 10 years ago doesn't protect them in the event of a dispute with this other contract party who used to be their friend or used to be their business partner or used to be their spouse.
Right.
And that's where hard decisions have to be made, and it can make a huge difference. I saw one case where it was some university, and I'll just let's just say it was in Ohio. It wasn't Ohio, but let's say it was in Ohio.
Mhm.
And the athlete disputed the terms of his NIL deal with some school in Ohio, and there was a concern raised that the judges in that jurisdiction would be biased in favor of the school to keep the good athlete
School.
at the local school. And I don't know what happened in that case, and it really was not in Ohio; it was in a different state. But the school is going to pick its backyard if it can, of course, and that's not necessarily an unreasonable contract term, but it's a contract term that should not be glossed over.
Yeah. Yeah. What are the hidden risks?
Like, so it could be more specific. Hidden risks for athletes.
Hidden risk for athletes, or let me reframe that question. How do you make legally proof contract, knowing whatever you just said now?
Right. I think the best thing that you can do as a young athlete, as a booster who's contributing their hard-earned funds, as a university, is to be adequately represented before signing the contract. So there's no concern for that when it comes to the universities. And what I've seen is that a lot of athletes, when they have a dispute with the school, hire very, very effective lawyers to represent them in connection with resolving the dispute. But the hidden risk in any negotiation, this is true in sports and business, is going into the negotiation with unequal bargaining power and with unequal representation. The athlete is probably always going to have unequal. Let me rephrase that. The athlete, for the most part, for the vast majority of athletes, will have less leverage than the institution has.
Than the institution itself, yeah.
But even the athlete who is not the number one recruit in the country can find in their community an effective transactional lawyer to help them through the conversation with the university and to help their parents evaluate their options in every community in this country. And the parent who is at the bargaining table with the head of NIL for a university is outmatched because the university, the institution, this is not a criticism. The institution does it every day, all day long. The parent has a child that they're trying to look out for, and that family should have at the table with them someone who understands the contract terms, who understands what the market is for this young athlete's services, and is also their fiduciary, right? So that person is at the table with an obligation to do what's best for the athlete. In a negotiation, the university may have the best intentions for the athlete, but they don't owe a fiduciary obligation to the athlete. The athlete is a recruit. And by the way, that was true before NIL. When I was an athlete, my teammates and I would sit down with schools. The school is recruiting you because they think you could be a good part of their program.
Yeah.
But their loyalty is with the university and with their own families, not yours.
When those contracts are signed, I'm trying to put myself in the shoes of an athlete. The athlete and their legal guardian, which is their parents, quite often, 90%,
Yes.
do they rush signing those contracts? Or is there a window? Is there a deadline to sign those contracts for the parents? Maybe say, okay, hang on, we have an offer here. Let's get the best legal advisor, as you say, and go through. And that takes time. Are they cornered, the parents together with their with the athlete? Are they cornered in terms of, okay, here is the offer, here is the agreement, go through it. You have 24 hours to sign the document, or no?
I think for the best athletes, they have multiple options. We see every day that athletes who are in the transfer portal have choices between schools, and they're picking schools based on the strength of what they're being proposed. I would think primarily in terms of the financial terms of the deal. And my feedback to really any of these individuals or families is the financial terms are very important, but they're not the only thing that's important in a contract, because the contract is being written in a way that, yes, you give up the rights to your name, your image, and your likeness. In exchange, some of these young people can become very, very financially secure, especially at the big schools. The question as a litigator is, what happens if the school doesn't keep its promises? Or what happens if you get injured? What happens if you get falsely accused of a crime that you did not commit?
Yeah.
Those are the questions to be asking. And what I'm saying, my message to the family is, you should ask the school the answer to the questions, but you should get a second opinion.
Second opinion, yeah. That's
Right.
the best advice. Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah.
Get second opinion, maybe even a third opinion.
That's right. That's right.
Is the system sustainable the way it is, the way it's designed now?
I think we have the foundations of a viable system, and it's evolving. So whether it's sustainable, it won't remain the same because there are so many stakeholders. There are the athletes who are, in my personal opinion, better off than we were in the past, because whether you have a multi-million-dollar NIL deal, or there's some examples that I've seen where student athletes will have a relationship with a restaurant or a grocery store chain where they can get food, right, in exchange for using their name, image, and likeness. And that frees them up to not have to maybe work weekends or work summers. They can focus on their sport and on their academics. So I think giving young athletes leverage that they earn from performing well is 100% positive. But there are institutions, both private and public. There's the big business of sports. There are global corporate sponsors, all of whom participate in this marketplace. And so with that said, we know that there won't be stagnation because some of the voices I just described are some big voices, and Congress gets involved, state legislatures get involved, governors of states have gotten involved. And so everyone should be, like in any business, looking out for the best interests of stockholders. And when you have that type of an environment, always going to have evolution and negotiation and bull compromising to get a lot of what they want, but you're never going to get everything that you want in a healthy business environment.
Yeah. No, fantastic. You clarified it very well. Just for the listeners, can you again summarize, Jonathan, if you don't mind? Because I believe I've been dealing with contracts related to sports events and athletes and for many, many, many years, and it doesn't matter how talented you are. At the end of the day, I'm not a lawyer and I will never pretend, but I remember one of the challenges, how shall I approach reading this piece of paper? Meaning, which clauses I need to pay attention to? What are the loopholes? What is the worst case scenario that can happen? So I always put the stuff, and how do you protect your team, your organization, and so on and so forth, and trying to minimize the risks. And minimizing the risk, quite often things are not between our hands. Just for the listeners, Jonathan, some kind of tips, while the parents, for example, with their child, mainly it's the parents reading the contract, what kind of tips or what clauses matter the most, in your opinion?
Sure. In the abstract, the financial terms of any deal are going to be crucial. The second term that is very important is the term. What is the length of time that the parties are contractually obligated to whatever they're promising that they're going to do? To use an NIL example, for how long does the school have the right, maybe the exclusive right, to this young athlete's name, image, and likeness? Is it an exclusive deal to where the athlete can't market their services with other companies and with other potentially competitors of the university? Third, there are these terms in a lot of these contracts. They're also in CEO contracts and coaching contracts. about essentially morality. So
Right.
what are the terms of the morality clause that's being offered? One thing we've seen in sports in particular is allegations of whatever kind made against a coach, made against an athlete, made against an athletic director. What you've seen probably like I is the person's immediately put on suspension while the institution investigates. I oftentimes do those investigations on behalf of companies. But what does that do to the athlete's rights under the NIL deal? What does that do to the coach's right to compensation under his or her employment agreement? While we're figuring out whether the allegation is even true, sure, you can suspend me from being on the sidelines, but can you also stop paying me?
Yeah.
Another one, and this is the one I spoke about earlier in our conversation, is the dispute resolution provision. And this is in every contract. Every contract has one. From whatever license agreement you sign when you get an iPhone, to when you sign up for Wi-Fi at your house, when you board an airplane. What happens if we break up? is a crucial question. Where will we go to court if we're in court at all? If it's arbitration, what are the rules that will govern the arbitration? Who will pay the attorney's fees if you win? Who pays the attorney's fees if I win?
That's really important.
It's crucial. And one of the biggest things, once a potential client gets to the point where we're having a conversation and they're in a business dispute that at that time is not in court, it's just a dispute amongst business people, is, this contract says that both sides will pay their own fees, which means if you get to the end of this and win, you will have paid your lawyers for the year or 2 years or 10 years that it takes. The other side will pay their lawyers, but the only money that you will recover is the money that you can prove is your damages in this dispute.
Yeah.
On the other hand, if there's a prevailing parties provision, you get to the end of this and you win, there's a chance that they'll pay your fees, but there's a chance that you'll have to pay theirs if you don't win.
Yeah. Wow.
and that can either embolden a party to go to court, and oftentimes it'll cause a potential client to say, well, I'd rather just end the relationship and focus on my business rather than being tied up in court for a long period of time and risk having to pay my lawyers and their lawyers at the end of this all.
Have you seen deals collapse because of this?
I haven't seen deals collapse because of the attorney's fees provision. I have seen business people wish they never signed the contract, more because of who they agreed to do business with than because of these specific contract terms, right? Because a business deal, especially if it's going to be a long-term business deal, is as much about the exchange of compensation and goods and services as it is about a partnership between two entities or two people who may not be aligned in terms of their values. And you get to the end of it and you realize sometimes that the person that you agreed to do a contract with is not a good person, which means if we go to court, you can expect them to continue not acting like a good person. And that causes the cost of litigation to skyrocket oftentimes. And what I find is that people who are in court and maybe are realizing for the first time that their former business partner wasn't being honest or took advantage of them, there's the pain of the disappointment of that breakdown in the relationship, but there's equally a financial cost that can be tremendous in our society.
Wow. It's kind of, I'm just trying because this is kind of new, but I'm just trying to forecast in terms of the landscape, how is going to be the next 5, 10 years from now. I think we're going to see more lawyers and legal advisors into this business than yeah. But it's fascinating, Jonathan. It's really fascinating. You know, before it was so simple.
Yeah, it was. And when I was an athlete, I still think you're right. It is fascinating and it's evolving and it's becoming more and more complex. But when I was an athlete, you had no rights to protect. So, it's better to have rights to protect, and it costs a little bit of money to protect those rights than to be in an environment where you have no negotiating power and where, back in this is the early 2000s, for example, all my teammates, we were all on video games, and we actually used to have great fun playing ourselves on the video game. It was great. They didn't use our
Yeah.
names, just our number and our likeness. The number
Yeah.
would look exactly like you.
Yeah.
And we loved it actually, and never thought we deserved to be paid for this. but but had we been paid for it, that money, even if it was a small amount of money, could have gone toward expenses of being in school, could have gone toward expenses of traveling during the summer. For a lot of my teammates, I mean, I went to school pretty close to home the first time. For a lot of my teammates, going home to see their family cost a lot of money that they did not have. And so to me, NIL at the smallest level if the kid has a contract where they make enough money to go visit their mom every semester, to the young athletes, women and men who are making millions, it's net positive for sports. The lawyers and the politicians and the business people and the leaders in our communities have to just figure out how to keep corruption out, how to keep fraud out, and ultimately how to protect the consumer, which makes this all possible.
While you were talking about the various clauses that we need to pay attention to, one of the clauses is the morality ones. Are they becoming stricter? Or I remember we spoke during our intro chat about if an athlete is under investigation or misconduct, and the school or the institution, they want to be out of the spotlight, put it this way. Those clauses, are they really well detailed, written, and stricter?
They're pretty broad, and they are meant to favor the university in the sense that it gives the university discretion to determine whether it's been violated or not. So there's a couple components to this. The first one is an allegation comes to light. It could be an allegation of financial misconduct or a moral failure in terms of an intimate relationship. It could
Or
be
something
an
surface on
alleged
social
crime.
media.
Sure.
Sorry, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
So all those circumstances happen. They happen every day. And when that
yeah.
happens, someone at the university picks up the contract.
We'll flag it.
It says, well, we have clause 7, and they're going to argue this fits within clause 7.
Right.
The coach, athlete, the CEO, whoever it is who is being accused of wrongdoing could be guilty of the wrongdoing or not. But you can expect the contract to allow the institution to, at a minimum, suspend or put that person on hold until it's all resolved. We've seen some of the investigations and resolutions, and ultimately, if there's a criminal case, can take years to resolve, to figure out whether the person is liable for what they're accused of doing or not. An important consideration in the NIL context is what happens in terms of compensation while the university is figuring it out. And then second, let's assume the university doesn't have to pay during that time. What happens if the athlete, coach, CEO is later to be found innocent, or if the accuser drops the charges or comes out and says, hey, I was lying all along? There is no foolproof way to navigate this. My feedback is it's something that we should all be thinking about and discussing on the front end before agreeing to a term like that. I mean, nobody in their right mind goes into one of these high profile positions with an expectation that they are later going to be accused of some kind of wrongdoing. So maybe people don't focus on these provisions, but they matter. And they exist not only in college sports, but we've also seen them in professional sports where owners, for example, of teams in the NFL have been accused of different types of wrongdoing. The university, the team has to put the person on suspension until they find out if the allegations are true. But what happens in the meantime? And
Yeah.
can you be fired before the investigation concludes, which is what happened in the case of Michigan's football coach
Yeah.
last
Yeah.
year.
Let's talk about AI, artificial intelligence. Is AI a threat or a tool in law?
Is it will be both, but it's a greater tool than it is a threat. The the ability of AI, even at its still emerging state, to help us be more efficient, to help us save time that we then don't have to charge to our clients, has already revolutionized my business and what we do for our clients every day. And Sid, there's another thing happening, which is that clients are doing two things. One, they're requiring us to use AI and to tell them how we're doing it. But the second thing that they're also doing is holding lawyers accountable to using AI ethically. Courts are doing the same thing. Courts are saying,
Interesting.
where the world is going, of course you're going to use AI. But if you use AI, at least here in South Florida, a number of courts have said you have to actually include a certification with your filing that says that you used AI.
Ah,
And I think they're trying to put up guardrails to deter attorneys from improperly using AI in the sense of using AI without responsibility. And there have been instances of lawyers who have cited to case law that doesn't exist in legal filings, or who have submitted orders for a judge to sign that include citations to cases that are what we call hallucinated. Um,
okay.
and so
Because AI does hallucinate quite often.
exactly. So AI to me, at the ethical level, is only a threat in the hands of an unethical person or a professional
Person, yeah.
in law. It is a tool in all of our hands, including hands of judges and clients and practicing attorneys. And I think another question that's been raised in our legal system is, will AI essentially take away jobs from young lawyers who are not yet experienced trial attorneys or experienced transactional attorneys? And I don't have the vision yet to answer whether it will take jobs away from some young lawyers. I think that the best young lawyer will look at this as an opportunity to
Right.
become the best at using AI to optimize the practice, using it to make their colleagues' jobs easier and to make life easier for the judge, while at the same time honing those skills that AI cannot replace, which is
All right.
uh, in person oral advocacy, not just in courtrooms, but in conference rooms and at deal tables and in negotiations.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Jonathan, what makes you hopeful?
Everything. Yeah,
You
everything.
have kids.
I do. Yeah,
You've been
yeah.
playing since a young age in sport, basically playing basketball. You coached. You've been in the courtrooms, dealing with all sort of cases, and now you're raising. How many kids you have?
Three,
I forget to ask. Three
three.
kids.
Yes, sir.
God bless. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you.
What makes you hopeful?
Sid, all of those life experiences and many others contribute to a perspective that we should have unwavering hope for the future. Life is difficult, sure. There's a lot going on in the world, across the world. And at the heart of it, and we talked about this today a little bit, are certain traits that have always existed in humanity. And those of us who accept and acknowledge pain, but who see their role as turning pain into progress, can change the world. You can reshape history. Even if you don't change the world and reshape history, you can inspire a child, your child or someone else's, to be great or to be better than their circumstances would suggest is possible. And so to me, hope manifests on an interpersonal level, it manifests on an organizational level, and it manifests on a global level the same way, which is in times of pain, focus on progress. In times of thirst and hunger, feed someone else. And in doing so, I promise you'll find hope in the smile that they reciprocate for your act of service. And I haven't felt suffering recently, but I've seen it many times in my life. And even in those moments, I've seen suffering people show gratitude, show grace, grit, and humility. And I can never forget those images. And they give me hope and faith in tomorrow, even if today isn't great.
Wow. I will add to that charity and love, unconditional love. And suffering is part of the journey, Jonathan. It doesn't matter how much we plan, how much we, quite often, we never know what's ahead, what's tomorrow. We never know. And when it's happened, depend. It's funny, you were talking earlier about body and mind. When I was in the sports university, we've been taught about body and mind, prepare athletes to the top, to their peak, mentally and physically. It's just recently I discovered something completely different. Body, yes, mind is part of the body, but soul, that was the missing part I always was looking for since a long time as a coach as well. When I was training Olympic athletes, and quite often I see athletes on the podium with a medal around their neck, and I say how they did it, you know. And quite often those athletes they have something others they don't. It's that yeah. But thanks for sharing. Really love what you said, and I fully agree with everything you said.
Thank you, Sid.
You're listening to the Pre-Zero Sports Talk. For more conversations on sports leadership, faith, performance, and innovation from Sweden to the world, visit prezerosportstalk.com. Jonathan, it's time for our lightning round.
Okay, let's do it.
Ready
I'm
for
excited.
speedy Q&A?
Yes, sir. Let's do it. I'm thrilled.
Let's do it. Morning person or a night owl?
Morning person.
Coffee, tea, or something else?
Coffee in the morning, tea sometimes at night.
Night. Favorite sport beside basketball?
These days, football. Your football.
Which football? Soccer? Our
Soccer.
football?
Yeah. Soccer.
Soccer. Any favorite team, if I may ask?
My wife played at the University of Louisiana, so that's my favorite team. And we watch soccer when it's on, and I look forward to actually going to the World Cup one day. But it's not something that I follow day to day. It's more just a sport that I've adopted by marriage.
And since you said that, let me ask you this question. Why on earth in USA women's soccer it's better than it's not better for God's sake, you won the World Cup many times.
Yes.
And the dudes are not capable. Sorry, I have to ask this.
Yeah. I unfortunately I have no idea. I don't know.
Is it
but
culture?
the women.
Is it the culture? Is it the system itself? Is it what is it?
Yeah, if I was going to speculate, I think it also based on sort of being around some very decorated women soccer players over the last 10 years or so. I think that it could be that American male athletes focus much more on the sports that traditionally could lead to making a lot of money from sports. So in the United States, that is American football, basketball, even to some degree, but to a lesser degree, baseball.
Baseball, yeah.
Is what most of us, especially from communities like the one that I grew up in, grow up playing, because you can play it in your front yard or at a local park, and it doesn't have to be organized. You can just play pickup, if you will. And so that may contribute to there being fewer of the most elite male athletes going into soccer, particularly in urban environments. But to me, that doesn't necessarily account for why women's soccer is so much more impressive in the United States, except, women's sports in the United States, at least, typically don't lead to making over the course of history as much money as male athletes make. And there's no like professional women's football, for example. So it could be sort of socioeconomic factors that lead to athletes picking one sport over another. But we have definitely I have personally seen a lot of excitement around women's professional soccer, both in the United States and abroad. And then for sure, when the World Cup comes, it gets crazy around here, which is great to see.
Let's see. And I was happy that last week, finally, the WNBA reached a deal for the players, for the women basketball players, because since many years, I mean, the ladies, they've been putting a fantastic show out there,
Agreed.
but they were lacking that kind of recognition and I was really happy to see that last week.
Same here. And they were able to achieve that outcome because they have more and more leverage every year.
Yeah, they do.
Which is great to see.
It is. One word for pressure.
Could you clarify, for reacting to pressure or what?
We've been talking about pressure on a basketball court or in sport and
Yes.
in a courtroom. How do you define pressure? If you can, in one word. If it is possible, I don't know.
I can. Okay. I understand. Showtime.
There we go. Showtime. Hardest lesson learned.
Failure.
Best advice ever received.
To believe in your own vision of the future, even if no one else does.
The worst career advice you ever gotten.
Don't follow your dream.
It's common, man. Love it. A book that changed you.
Great one. Book of Matthew. In the Bible.
In the Bible. Any particular?
Yes.
Chapter
There's sure. There's a couple passages where essentially Jesus is quoted as saying, "The greatest among you will be your servant, and the one who rules like the one who serves."
Amen to that. Yeah. Biggest myth about lawyers.
I think that's a great one. That we are all charismatic.
One daily habit you can't live without.
Exercise.
What drives you?
Vision drives me, and as I've progressed in life, matured in life, the vision has expanded from a vision for myself to a vision for a family, a vision for a community, a vision for a country. And so that is what is on my mind, even when it's not like directly in front of me, because I've seen, not me personally, I mean, I've had a pretty good experience, but I've seen people accomplish amazing things from very humble beginnings. So I know it's possible.
If you could have a dinner with a historical figure, who will it be and why?
My ancestors were, on my dad's side, were slaves. And one of my great grandfathers actually picked our last name, Osborne, after the American slaves were freed. And so I would sit with him and his wife and ask them what their vision was.
And finally, piece of advice or wisdom to our listeners on any topic.
The wisdom I'd share is wherever you are in life today can be just the beginning if you look at it that way. And the future can be bright. We have so many reasons to have hope for the future, but a bright future starts with the choices we make today, to keep going, to not give up, and to become a better leader every day, because every failure is an opportunity to become a better leader. Every success is an opportunity to become a leader. And truly, you can become legendary by serving and never giving up.
Jonathan Osborne, thank you very, very much for joining us today. It's been an absolute pleasure having you on the show.
Sid, the pleasure's been mine. I really have appreciated the opportunity to spend some time with you. I've also, since we met, had the chance to watch a lot of the really great discussions that you've had with people from around the world on your platform, and you're really making a huge difference and have inspired me to be better and also to be great. And so I thank you for that.
You're welcome. And Jonathan, before we wrap up, can you share how can people connect with you if they're looking or seeking for legal advice?
Sure. So if you're just looking to connect with me around topics like sports and leadership, I have a podcast called Always an Athlete, also hosted on YouTube. We release episodes on every other Thursday. And for legal advice, you can find me at josborne@gunster.com or on our website, which is gunster.com. If you Google my name, an attorney, you'll find me.
Right. And we're going to put all that in our show note. And to our listeners, I leave you with this quote from the one and only Vince Lombardi. The measure of who we are is what we do with what we have. We want to thank you for joining our show. If you enjoyed this episode, we have more for you. You can now watch the entire episode on our YouTube and Spotify channels. While you're here, subscribe and don't forget to tap the bell. Visit prezerosportstalk.com to explore more conversations on sports, leadership, faith, performance, and innovation. From Sweden to the world. Until next time, stay curious, stay inspired, and make a difference. We'll see you soon. Take care.